Hello, hello. Good morning. Buenos dias. Bonjour. Bonsoir, wherever you are. Welcome to the Daily Huddle Thursday Spiritual Matters Edition. I am your host, Dr. Monikah Ogando. Today we're going to be talking about can you be both spiritually grounded, centered, and materially rich? And I have a quote for you that will address that because we're going to be using the quote and breaking it down. It's going to be the basis. It's basically the outline of our conversation today. And the quote comes from a philosopher whose name is Evan Cesar. And he says, success is the good fortune that comes from aspiration, desperation, inspiration, and perspiration. So we're going to talk about that today. Welcome to the Daily Huddle. Well, hello. How are you? I am so happy that you are here. We are going to be talking about whether you can be spiritually grounded and materially rich. And you probably, when you saw the little placard for the little postcard for our announcement for today, you probably made up your mind about where you stand on that. Some of you, I'm going to give you a number and you're going to put it on the chat. Okay. Some of you are, of course, you can be spiritually grounded and materially rich. I'm living proof of that. You guys put a 1 in the chat. Okay. Then there's some of you that are like, I don't know if I'm spiritually grounded or materially rich, honey, but I'm trying. You guys put a 2 in the chat. I don't know if it's possible, but I'm trying. And then some of you are saying, I don't know if it's possible, and it's no use in trying. And those folks are probably not listening to the Daily Huddle, truth be told. But we welcome everybody. So if you're the kind that's like, I'm only here to watch you fall on your face, because that's a wrong premise to begin with. It's not possible. Put a 3 in the chat. We're gonna love you through your pessimism. That's fine. So the reason why I love this quote from Evan Cesar is it really breaks down the areas in which we sometimes find ourselves, sometimes all at the same time, and sometimes in any given space of our lives. So I want to go back to those 4 points. The success is the good fortune that comes from aspiration, desperation, inspiration, and perspiration, right? So there's this aspirational aspect of our lives that has us desire something, that has us hope for something, that we may not necessarily have experienced it, but we want it to be true. Right? That's what aspiration is. And then we go for it. We go for this thing that we want so much for it to be true, to be useful, to be helpful, to be reality. And we go and make it happen, or try to anyways. Desperation, of course, is, listen, I got to make something work. And you have heard me say, I'm sure you've heard this saying of there are no atheists in foxholes. And when we get to the point of being quote unquote desperate, when we get to the point of, oh my God, I have no answers, then we start looking. That desperation forces us to look within, to look from whence does my help come, right? And we start to see that you can make some stuff happen out of desperation. It's not a sustainable strategy, Lord have mercy, but it's helpful in sometimes. And then inspiration comes from within. It's not something that you desire out there. It's a divine download. It's an inkling. It's a urging of the soul that says, go this way, go that way, stop this, start that, right? And so then the perspiration, of course, is just good old fashioned sweat. Okay. So before we get into all of that, I defined all of that for you. And since we're talking about being spiritually grounded and materially rich, let's get grounded. Let's ask our questions that we ask when we get grounded. Because I just jumped into the definition. Did you see that? I just got so excited. Okay, so I want to ask, for example, Tara, my good friend Tara, right now, while she's eating. I'm going to ask her right now, while she's eating. Where are you and what are you grateful for?
I am right here with you and our community and nowhere else. And I guess this morning I'm feeling grateful for fruit.
Nice. What fruit are you eating for breakfast today?
Apples, bananas, and grapes.
Oh, that's a good triumvirate right there. That's a good one. Andrea, my friend, who are you going to hug today?
I am actually going to hug Sorel.
You are?
See him later. I know. So I'm gonna hug myself and then Sorel.
Oh, that's awesome.
I know.
I'm a little jealous. That's great. Good stuff. Chase, I don't know if you're in Alaska or where you at, my friend, because you look really wrapped up and warm over there. Where are you?
I'm right here.
And what time?
Right here in the daily huddle. You know, the time is always now. It's gonna be now when you ask me tomorrow. It's gonna be now when you ask me next week. The time is now.
I know it. I just know it. I love it. Thank you.
I'm not in Alaska.
You're not?
It's just a little chilly today.
Oh, all right. All right.
I'm in New York.
Oh, New York. Okay. All right. Well, what are we going to do about this? We're going to talk about aspiration, desperation, inspiration, and perspiration. And can you be materially rich and spiritually grounded? I think that first, let's give you some historical context. When people in politics and in government discovered that they could use religion as a way to govern, then the two kind of became conflated. And this is where we get the practice of popes. For example, in the Catholic Church, one of the practices or one of the sacraments was confession. And it wasn't a sacrament that was useful spiritually for the confessor. It was something that was useful for the priest hearing it, because this is how they got intel on the neighborhood to be able to report back to the mayor or the president or the emperor or whatever, and get favors in that way. So they were the first spies were Catholic priests hearing confessions. I don't know if you know that. Sorry to burst your bubble, everybody. But the conversation around using somebody's spirituality to control them, to get them to do what you want them to do, et cetera, that has been long used in human history, right? And so obviously, if there is a group of people who are interested in hoarding as much material resources as possible, we're going to make it morally wrong for you to get some of these resources, because I want to keep them. Not because it's actually wrong, but because I don't want your grubby little hands on the wealth that I have hoarded, right? And so we're gonna make, but you're not gonna hear it from me. So we're gonna ascribe it to God. We're gonna say, God, you can't serve God and mammon, right? But nobody said anything about serving God with mammon. I can serve God with mammon. You know what I mean? And so I want you to think about, what are some of the conversations that you yourself have around this either or dichotomy that sometimes we've just learned to swimming in the water of our society, that says you can't really be spiritually pure and also be concerned about money or wealth or financial sustainability, etc. Particularly, I want you to think about it from this perspective, particularly because we see that financial stability or material wealth, etc., is so lauded in this society. So it's almost like this bait and switch. It's almost like I want you to want it, but I don't want you to have it, right? In this society, it's like go after it and be wanting it, but don't boast about it too much, and don't make it all about that, etc. Because then that means that you're a bad person. And nobody says that in that direct kind of way, but it's just kind of like in the water, right? So I want you to think about why would someone set it up that way? What would I be distracted from if I did not feel this conflict? In other words, what would I be available for? I should rephrase that question. What would I be available for that I'm not currently available for if I did not have this conflict of God versus mammon? What if it's a false conflict? Because the way I hear it, I'm going to be truthful to you. The way I hear it is when somebody says something like that, I hear it like, so would you say the same thing of you cannot serve God and my breath? Because I kind of need my breath in order to serve God, if God is to be served or expressed. Would you say you cannot serve God and have a roof over your head? Does that even make sense? And so I want us to think about this. I want us to kind of like play with it. I want us, and it might be messy, it might be contradictory. That's fine. That's the whole point of digging in and figuring out how it is that we feel about certain things and where it is that we stand. So I want to open the conversation up. Like, what conflict do you feel around this? Do you feel that going after money or going after, sometimes people talk about in entrepreneurial circles, the breaking the 6-figure ceiling or breaking the 7-figure ceiling, or, you see an uprise of the influencer culture and everybody's flossing for the gram and just here's my yacht and here's my car and here's this and here's that. And these are all little symbols of wealth. But somehow we have it like symbols of wealth are anathema to a symbol or a gesture of spiritual groundedness. Do you feel that way? Consciously or unconsciously? And if you do, where did that come from? And does it resonate for you? Does it still hold true for you? Or is that just kind of like, that's just the water we're swimming in? I want to talk about it. What do you think? Yes, Sahara.
I love this conversation because it definitely resonates with me. And I'll tell you when it pops up, like I just feel in a quandary.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when I go to big cities, which I love to do, or when I lived in East Atlanta, we would see homeless people everywhere. And we're not especially religious, but my husband would always stop and give them something and say, it might be Jesus. Where does that end? And how can I sit in my warm, toasty car with my hot coffee and stare out the window at someone hungry, cold, no matter how they got there is not relevant to me. But is that help? That is where I really, really struggle. And sometimes even when I flip on my fireplace when it's cold outside,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's guilt. I think it's definitely gratitude. And then I feel like I must be the wealthiest person on earth. And it is a struggle for me. Like, I don't know how to find peace in that.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for presenting that. It speaks, I think a lot of us have that kind of cognitive dissonance about it. Yeah. Anybody else want to share something? Yes, Chase.
I think this conversation is interesting because we talk about people like Joel Osteen and Creflo Dollar, and people talk about like, oh, these guys are living in these big mansions and they have planes, and is that fair and is that not fair and all that. And I always say to myself, look, if you really, really think about it and really break it down to yourself, the happiest, most fluid and forward-moving times in your life, were they because of money? Or were they because of the company that you kept, or the service or the favor that someone allowed you? Just ask yourself that question. When I'm most abundant, like I remember once I did a gig for a company and they sent me a $14,000 check and I had to divvy that up between my people. And the amount that I kept from that was so massive to me after paying my people well, I thought, wow, this is awesome. But like one of the comedians said a long time ago, I forget, was it Jon Stewart or something? He was like, I remember when all I wanted to do was be on Letterman. Like, I'd be on Letterman, I'm going to be set, I'm going to be rich.
Yeah.
And then I got on Letterman, he talked to me, he said, oh, you're really good. I love you, kid. You're going to be really big. And then I went right back to my roach-infested apartment. And next month I had trouble paying my bills again. And and I think about stuff like that. Like, it's almost all mindset. And I do believe you can be spiritually sound and financially sound, but you work at it. And if you do it in an authentic way, yes, it can happen. I'm abundant. I'm abundant right now, and I'm going to be more abundant in the future. But it's also about how you're living in relation to your abundance. I know very, very wealthy people who are horrible. They're horrible people to me. They're so angry at people. They're so like, I'm like, why are you so angry? Because it's not about the money. You have to figure out that balance. And it's a true, I really believe it's a true balance. I truly believe that. Maybe 10% of people in life have that balance. And when you watch them and you see them, you know it. It's very evident.
It's very evident. I love that. Thank you, Chase. Cece, you got something?
Oh, yes. Good morning. I love the subject. How's it? I actually know some very wealthy people who are not happy, even though they have all this money. And I looked at it, and it's a heart issue. If the heart isn't right, it doesn't matter how much money a person have or doesn't have. Because I've been, my happiness, my most happy times has been when I didn't have much of nothing, where I had peace in my heart. And of course, money answers a lot of things, but those are all temporal. The temporal without money is all temporal, because I know God don't run out of money. So I'm just learning to tap into that source and look at my heart. If my heart is not right, I know God is not going to give me the desires of my heart if I ain't looked at myself and stop looking at everybody else. Because, you know, these people that are wealthy, we don't even know if they were given planes or somebody leased it for them. And what I do is stay on my business, nobody else's business, because this is something that I can't work out. So I'm just going to be happy today and be present today, and be thankful that I still get an opportunity to do something that matters. So I pass, and thank you.
That's beautiful. There's a couple of things that I heard in what you were sharing, Cece. One of them is, and hear me out, because I'm not saying that that's what you said. I'm just saying this is what I heard, okay? One of the ways that we justify poverty is by making wealth selfish, angry, et cetera, et cetera. And yes, there are some wealthy people that are like that. But the angriest I've ever been is when I've been broke. I'm not gonna lie. That shit is stressful. And I wasn't the best person, because I was like in such a survival thing that I wasn't kind, because I was stressed and I was in desperation, and I was like trying to find a way to feed my child or to keep a roof over our head, et cetera, et cetera. And it brought out the worst in my character. And I have noticed that it brings out the worst in a lot of people's characters when we are acting out of desperation. One of the reasons why, this is something that I learned from my daughter who's active duty in the Navy. One of the reasons why they keep an eye on your debt in the military, and that you can't get your credit score past, you can't go too low with your credit score or too high with your debt, is because it makes you susceptible to bribery, to blackmail, to espionage, somebody to say, hey, can you do this for this much money? Because you need it. And so they keep an eye on their soldiers and on their staff, et cetera, to say, you've got to have a certain level of financial stability so that you're not susceptible to somebody coming to you and then wanting to hire you to sell secrets, right? And I thought that was smart, but also, I want to point out something that perhaps we don't talk about a lot, and that is that all of this conversation that we have about money and about wealth and about the purity of it or the sustainability of it, et cetera, is all under the umbrella of capitalism, which is not the only financial model that we have for how we do commerce and how we survive and how we experience prosperity in the world. It isn't. It has been lauded. It has been, there's a lot of propaganda about this being the best, but it's not necessarily the best. And one of the things that I compare it to isn't other economic frameworks from other humans. I compare it to nature. Hear me out. When a lion is out there trying to find something to eat, that lion doesn't kill 300 deer. It kills one, the one it's gonna eat, and leaves the other ones alone. In fact, 20 deer could pass by. I don't even know if deer and lions belong in the same, environment, but follow me here. 20 deer could come pass by, and if he's already full, he's not gonna bother with them. There's no avarice in nature. There's no hoarding. There's no accumulation in nature. It's like, I'm gonna eat what I need for today, which is where that saying in the Lord's Prayer, give us today our daily bread. So in that environment, or with that premise of just going for what's useful to me, what's sustainable to me, then I'm not really interested in pursuing, in being a billionaire. I don't know if we need billionaires in this country, in this world. And if I were to become one, it would be so that it could be passed on and so that it can be, spread the wealth and so forth, which is why, a lion, when it kills 2 deer, it's like, oh, okay, now me and my homie can eat, not just me. But those 2 deer aren't just for me. You see what I mean? That there's a certain level of collective thinking, even in nature, even with predatorial behavior. So I just want to put that in, that I think a lot of what we think about wealth and about being spiritually grounded, we have to examine the water we're swimming in before we can say whether this is how it is. And the best example that I have of that is, for example, those of us who speak more than one language. For example, in English, you put the adjective before the noun, pretty girl. But in Spanish, you put the adjective after the noun, niña bonita. Neither one of them is wrong. But if I were to use the syntax of English in Spanish, it would sound weird, and vice versa. If I were to use the syntax in Spanish and use it in English, it would sound weird. I wouldn't say girl pretty. You'd be like, I think you mean pretty girl, right? And so I want you to be knowledgeable enough of the spiritual language and the material language so that you can understand that syntax isn't wrong in and of itself. It's just the framework and the environment in which you're using it. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Because saying pretty girl in English is correct, but saying bonita niña, for example, it may be passable, but that's not how we say it in Spanish, and vice versa, right? Think about that from a spiritual perspective. If something, using a universal law, for example, as above, so below, if something isn't universal, then it's not a universal law. If it doesn't apply to everything and everyone, then it's not a principle, it's a preference. And it's the same with our spiritual groundedness. First, you get to define it for yourself. And then secondly, you get to check in. Is what I'm defining for myself, does that make sense? Is that sustainable? Do I see it done in other places? Do animals work this way? Does nature work this way? Have other civilizations work this way? Or am I just in this little parentheses called the post-industrial revolution? And I think that because I just know the history of the past 200 years, I think that this is the way that it is, or the way that it's been, right? And we want to be not just global citizens of the world, but timeless citizens of the world, that we can leave a mark with our own spiritual journey, with how we impact each other, with our economies, with our contributions, with our philosophies and so forth, and leave the world better than we found it. For some, that's a worthy endeavor, aspiration. For others, they're too busy with survival, desperation. But what I know to be true, that when we get clear on where we are, then it's easier to figure out a way to get to where we want to be. Just like, you know, if you were lost in a neighborhood and that you called your friend and you were like, I need to get to your house and I don't know where I'm at right now. The first, or I don't know where you are, the first thing that they would ask you is, where are you now? Just look at the street. What corner are you at? And then that way, from where you are, they can guide you to your destination. So I want you to get clear on, where are you now spiritually? Do you feel well fed? Do you feel like you have some unanswered questions? Do you feel like your faith has been shaken? Do you feel like your faith is strong? And if so, then from where you are, where do you want to go? And then the map itself will reveal. Sorrel, you have something?
Yes. Monica and everyone, thank you. I first want to say that I was born and raised Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm no stranger to confessions and the discomfort of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've always related to confessing and having money in somehow the same way. And I'm discovering that now. Like confession is a necessary evil and money is a necessary evil.
Mm-hmm.
If I want to be a faithful Catholic, I'm going to confess. So I used to make up stuff.
Right.
You know, like I killed a lizard.
Golly, yes, I used to do that too. I grew up Catholic. Yeah.
Right. And so my relationship to my spirituality and my relationship to money share this aspect where a lot of the people who are rich and have money in Haiti, I consider bad.
Mm-hmm.
So for me to have money would be, quote unquote, siding with them.
Mm.
So it's as if, and
train your people.
yeah, so it's as if in the beginning, I made this choice that I would have just enough to not be dirt poor,
Mm-hmm.
but just enough to never fit in that category of quote unquote bad people.
Yeah, right.
So the other thing I'm discovering now is that my own, what I call my spiritual groundedness, has also been as a condemnation for those who have a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to be good just so I won't be like you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to flaunt my goodness when you're present so you can be as guilty as I want you to be.
Woo! Yes.
And it's like, wow, that's a recipe for misery if I know one.
Yeah, exactly.
So it took a while for me to be able to own up to that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's taking daily practice to remind myself that I have that relationship with my spirituality and money.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm at peace with it. And I'm aware that it's kind of like that's the way the human being I was raised to be functions,
yeah,
and sees the world. And now the seeing of it is like an opening to be wealthy now, and an opening to be spiritually grounded now, and both.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Because they're not mutually exclusive, right? That's what we're learning, that they're not mutually exclusive, and that we can explore how they can live together. Good stuff. All right, who else has something?
Well, before you sign us off, I think that Sorrel was hitting on what I touched on in the beginning, and I thought you were going to fix me, and you didn't. So I need more.
Too much pressure, man.
I think that a lot of folks were like, oh, I know people who are wealthy and they're maybe not happy.
Yes.
But I see us, everyone in the huddle, that we are the wealthy ones comparatively. And
Yeah,
sometimes I struggle with that. So thank you for bringing that to light. And Sorrel, thank you for the piece you put around it.
that's awesome. Awesome. So here's the part that I wanna say about this. I'm gonna say the quote again. Chase asked me to put the quote in. I'm gonna say the quote again because I want you to take some of those words, and maybe the homework for today, if we're gonna have homework, is to contemplate on what each one of those words mean. Evan Essar says, success is the good fortune that comes from aspiration, desperation, inspiration, and perspiration. Success is the good fortune that comes from aspiration, desperation, inspiration, and perspiration. Evan, E-V-A-N, Essar, E-S-A-R. And I want you to think about, where have you given in to desperation? Where has your aspiration left you wanting for more? Maybe you feel betrayed by your own inspiration. And maybe you're not feeling too motivated to exert much more perspiration. Maybe you feel like you've done enough of that. Enough of the sweating already. Can I just sit down? Lord have mercy. So just think about this. Have this be a contemplative moment for you, because I am of the mind, I am of the heart, that I serve God with mammon. They're not mutually exclusive. Hashtag stand for the and. And when you can see the and you can be more inclusive, you can see more solutions, and you can see more resources than would be previously available to you. So thank you, everybody, for being with us. Thank you for sticking through this conversation. Remember to live, love, laugh, give of yourself, give of your time, give of your energy, give of your attention. Move your tail feather. Remember to shake your booty, dance, burn some calories, eat more plant-based foods, stress less, get at least 7 hours of sleep. And of course, audit your assumptions. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. We love you. See you next time.
Thank you. Magical as always.
Thank you, Tara, for being here with us.